welcome back to Actual English, everyone. I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 284, and today's topic is Korean food, but specifically the most exotic Korean food. So, what would you define as Korea's most exotic food? When we say exotic, it means that it's quite different. It's strange in a way, but not in a bad way. It's uniquely different, for example. There are tons of exotic foods I can think of. There's, for example, 홍어. There's even 산낙지, which is live octopus people enjoy having, and lots, many more types of exotic foods. Not only will you find exotic foods in Korea, but worldwide. Each and every country around the world have their own types of exotic foods, right? Okay, but specifically, let's talk about Korean foods, exotic Korean foods. Let's begin with actual talk.
I'm addicted to this TV show. It's an American guy who travels all over the world and tastes all the exotic foods from each culture.
Exotic. By exotic, do you mean strange, interesting,
strange,
freaky?
Interesting, scary for me and probably many people.
Have you tried any of the foods that he's had?
Nope, none of them.
How about in Korea? Because there are things that are exotic to us, foreigners.
Right.
Maybe not so much to Koreans, but like the live octopus, nakji. Have you had that?
No, I've never had. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, how is it?
Surprisingly tasty.
Really?
And surprisingly, it moves a lot.
Well, that's the
considering it should
thing.
be dead.
Like, considering it should be dead, but the point is it's alive, right?
Yeah, but what they do is they cut it up into pieces, like the
Okay.
legs. But the legs move by themselves, even without being attached to the body.
Kind of like a chicken that's had its head cut off,
Maybe.
continues running around for a little while.
That would also be an interesting thing to eat, yeah, a live chicken running around. But the nakji, you dip it in like sesame oil and salt, so it just tastes like the seasoning.
Okay.
It's really good. But apparently it's dangerous because it can get stuck in your throat when it's wriggling.
And doesn't it have little suckers,
Yes.
suction cups on the ends of the
Part
tentacles?
of the adventure, I guess.
I don't know. I think that would be a very interesting sensation. And hopefully one day I'll be brave enough to experience it.
Sure.
Having something moving in your mouth
Yeah.
as you're trying to eat it.
It is something to put down on your resume, I think. But what about intestines? That's less exotic, I
Okay,
guess.
yeah, I have tasted that. And if I don't think about it too much, it's delicious.
That's the thing. You can't focus on what it is. The same with pig's feet here.
Okay.
You know, it tastes really good, but then they leave like the bones and the toes. And then when I see that at the bottom of the pack, I get a bit queasy.
Just look away, close your mouth, and enjoy the flavor.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't imagine what you're eating, right?
Exactly.
Okay, we've heard some familiar names. We heard nakji, we heard 족발, not exactly 족발, but pig's feet, also called petty toes, so keep that in mind. So let's take a look at the conversation, the actual talk conversation where Peter and Mary talk about Korean exotic foods. I'm addicted to this TV show. So once again, we're talking about very exotic Korean foods, and Mary somehow says, I'm addicted to a TV show. I wonder why she begins talking about a TV show. But the point is, to be addicted to something means that you are devoted to something. You cannot live without something, for example. A bit of exaggeration, but really, if you are hooked on something, you are addicted to something. In this case, she means she loves a television show. She's fallen in love with it. It's an American guy or a program where an American guy travels all over the world. What does he do? He tastes all the exotic foods from each culture. So he's traveling all over the world to many different kinds of to many different countries, and he's trying different kinds of foods from each and every country or culture. Now, Peter asks, exotic? By exotic, do you mean strange, interesting, freaky? That's a vocab word, but when I was defining the word exotic to you, do you remember which words I used? I think I said exotic. It's different. It's strange, but in a good way, I think I said. It's uniquely different. So just because you say something is exotic, it doesn't mean that it's always good, nor does it mean that it's always bad. It can mean that it's strange. It can mean that it's interesting. It can also mean that it's freaky. Freaky meaning scary, a bit different, okay? So she says, well, strange, interesting, scary for me, for her, and probably many people. Now, Peter says, have you tried any of the food that he's had? We're talking about the guy on that American television show, the guy that travels to all these different countries where he tries exotic foods from each culture. But the point is, Peter asks, have you tried any of the foods? Try here means have you eaten? Okay, have you eaten? Have you tried the foods that he introduces or has on the programs? Mary says, nope, none of them. How about in Korea? Because there are things that are exotic to us foreigners. So to foreigners, there are many, many different types of exotic foods you will find in Korea. Maybe not so much to Koreans. So he's saying, you know, there are things that are exotic to foreigners, but not exotic to Koreans. But like the live octopus would be correct. Live squid sometimes, but live octopus would be correct, since we're talking about nakji, which is a type of octopus. He says, have you had that? You can also ask, have you tried that? Mary says, no, I've never had that. Okay, that was omitted. I've never had that, or I've never had nakji before. Have you? She asks. Yeah. Okay, how is it? She asks. Peter says, surprisingly tasty. Okay, surprisingly tasty, he says. Tasty obviously means that it is delicious. It's palatable, in other words. But if you say that something is surprisingly something, you're saying that it is very much, very tasty. Okay, very tasty. It's very good. And surprisingly, it moves a lot considering it should be dead. So considering is just another way of saying taking something into consideration. Okay, to take something into consideration, to think about something and say, considering that it should be dead. That's right, because you chop it all up. You cut up the live octopus. So it shouldn't be moving, but it moves a lot, considering it should be dead. Well, that's the thing. That's the problem, she says. Considering it should be dead, but the point is, it's alive, right? Although you cut it up into so many small pieces, it's still alive. Peter says, yeah, but what they do is they cut it up. They cut up the octopus into small pieces. Okay? You can cut something into small pieces. You can cut something into cubes. Okay? You can cut something into round shapes, for example, but he's saying that they cut it up into pieces. Cut the octopus or the live octopus into many small pieces, but the legs move by themselves. The legs move anyway, even after they cut it up. Here we go. Now Mary says, okay, kind of like a chicken that's had its head cut off. That's true. I've never seen this before, but I have heard that chicken, even when their heads are cut off, they continue to run around for a little while. Is that true? Has anyone seen this? I really am curious. I wouldn't want to see it for myself, but I am curious. But she's just making a comparison because Peter just mentioned, well, the octopus is cut up into small bits and pieces, but the legs still move around. And Mary says, oh, it's kind of like, it's similar to a chicken that runs around or that continues running around for a little while after its head is cut off or chopped off. Maybe, he says, but the nakji. Let's talk about nakji. You dip it in. Okay, once again we see this dip something in a type of sauce. Dip it in sesame oil and salt. So it just tastes like the seasoning. Doesn't taste very much like the nakji, the octopus, but it tastes like the sesame oil and salt. It's really good, but apparently it's dangerous. Why? It can be dangerous because it can get stuck in your throat when it's wriggling. People say that you should always be careful when you eat certain kinds of foods. Let's say, for example, nakji, because it moves around and it has those suction cups, for example, that can stick to your skin. Yeah, you should always chew carefully when you have nakji because, yes, it could be dangerous because if it gets stuck in your throat, you can suffocate, okay? It could really suffocate you. So let's take a look at the word wriggle, wriggling. Wriggle is W-R-I-G-G-L-E. We'll take a look at the pronunciation later on. But to wriggle means to kind of move, okay? Kind of squirm, I guess, okay? That's wriggling. So it can be movements from top to bottom, to and fro, side to side. We're talking about these sudden movements, as you would see a worm wriggle, a snake wriggle, for example. But there is a difference between wriggle and wiggle. Okay, there is a very similar word. That's wiggle. Sorry, that's a W. Okay, so this word here is W-R-I-G-G-L-E. And this word is W-I-G-G-L-E. In this word, there is no R. There is a slight difference in the definition. To wiggle usually means to move from side to side. We're talking about quick movements. This is wiggling, okay? This is wiggling. But wriggling is like all over, okay? So imagine worm, snake, wriggle, okay? And wiggle is just from side to side. Anyhow, he's talking about how it can be dangerous. Now, Mary says, and doesn't it have little suckers? Okay, suction cups on the ends of the tentacles. Yes, we're talking about suction cups. Okay, suction cups. Now, where are these suckers or suction cups? The ends of the tentacles. We're talking about feelers. Okay, an easy word for tentacles is feelers. We're talking about these organs that actually, I guess, organs that act as sensors or feelers, especially in animals. So he says, yes, part of the adventure, I guess. Part of the adventure. What does he mean by this? Adventure when it comes to having nakji? He's saying that part, the suction cups, how the nakji moves when you put it in your mouth, it just adds fun to the dish. Okay, it adds fun to nakji. It's like an adventure. It makes it more interesting, is what he is trying to say. Now, Mary says, I don't know. I think that would be a very interesting sensation. Sensation is just another word for feeling, okay? And hopefully, one day, I'll be brave enough to experience it. In this case, experience would mean to try it, okay? Try having nakji. Having something moving in your mouth as you're trying to eat. Exactly. Something moving in your mouth while you're trying to eat it, while you're trying to chew it, for example, okay? And then moving on, Peter says, yeah, it is something to put down on your resume, I think. Now, this is interesting. Put down on your resume. You may wonder, why are we talking about resumes? We're talking about exotic foods, nakji. But why is Peter talking about putting something down on somebody's resume? Now, he's saying this because, of course, to Koreans, eating nakji is not a big deal, but to foreigners especially, it could be something quite different, something scary to some. So he's saying you should really try it. It's different, it's interesting. And once you try it, you can put it down on your resume, meaning you could boast about it. You could tell people, hey, I had nakji. Be proud of it. So he's saying it should be remembered. You should put it down on your resume, okay? You should mark it on your resume. But what about intestines? That's less exotic. We're talking about intestines, stomach intestines. We have large intestines, small intestines. And he says that's less exotic, meaning it's not as exotic as samnakji, for example. Well, Mary says, yeah, I have tasted that. And if I don't think about it too much, it's delicious. Interesting. So she says, I have tasted that. That meaning we're talking about perhaps what? I don't know if they're talking about pig's intestine or not. So it could be, for example, sundae. They call that pig's intestine. Or we can be talking about, I guess, for example, daechang, which is also cow's intestine, I believe. Okay, so she's tried that and she says, if I don't think, it's intestines, it's quite delicious. If she doesn't think about that, it's delicious. He says, that's the thing. That's the thing. This is what you would say, especially in a situation where you want to make a point, especially when you disagree with something or agree with something. That's it. That's the thing. You can't focus on what it is. You can't think about what it is. You cannot remind yourself what it is. The same with pig's feet. Okay, we're talking about pig's feet now. Okay, 족발 it is. I also did mention that pig's feet, usually that's used to cook meals as food. It's also called petticoat, petitoes, okay? All right, moving on. He says it tastes really good, but then they leave the bones and the toes. And when I see that at the bottom of the pack, I get a bit queasy. Okay. Queasy is another word for nauseous. So if you feel queasy, you're saying, I feel kind of sick. I want to vomit. I want to throw up. I feel nauseated. Just look away, she says. Don't look at it. Close your mouth and enjoy the flavor. And Peter agrees. Just don't imagine. Don't think about what you're eating. And there we go. Mary says exactly that's it. So there are plenty of delicious types of foods out there in each and every culture and country. Try them out and write them down or put them down on your resumes. Let's take a listen one more time.
I'm addicted to this TV show. It's
really?
an American guy who travels all over the world and tastes all the exotic foods from each culture.
Exotic. By exotic, do you mean strange, interesting,
Strange,
freaky?
Interesting, scary for me and probably many people.
Have you tried any of the foods that he's had?
Nope, none of them.
How about in Korea? Because there are things that are exotic to us, foreigners.
Right.
Maybe not so much to Koreans, but like the live octopus, nakji. Have you had that?
No, I've never had. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, how is it?
Surprisingly tasty.
Really?
And surprisingly, it moves a lot.
Well, that's
considering
the
it should
thing.
be dead.
Considering it should be dead, but the point is it's alive, right?
Yeah, but what they do is they cut it up into pieces, like the
Okay.
legs. But the legs move by themselves, even without being attached to the body.
Kind of like a chicken that's had its head cut off,
Maybe.
continues running around for a little
That
while.
would also be an interesting thing to eat, yeah, a live chicken running around. But the nakji, you dip it in like sesame oil and salt, so it just tastes like the seasoning.
Okay.
It's really good. But apparently it's dangerous because it can get stuck in your throat when it's wriggling.
And doesn't it have little suckers,
Yes.
suction cups on the ends of the
Part
tentacles?
of the adventure, I guess.
I don't know. I think that would be a very interesting sensation. And hopefully one day I'll be brave enough to experience it.
Sure.
Having something moving in your mouth
Yeah.
as you're trying to eat it.
It is something to put down on your resume, I think. But what about intestines? That's less exotic, I
Okay,
guess.
yeah, I have tasted that. And if I don't think about it too much, it's delicious.
That's the thing. You can't focus on what it is. The same with pig's feet here.
Okay.
You know, it tastes really good, but then they leave like the bones and the toes. And then when I see that at the bottom of the pack, I get a bit queasy.
Just to look away, close your mouth, and enjoy the flavor.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't imagine what you're eating, right?
Exactly.
Welcome back, everyone. Now it's time for actual expressions. Let's take a look at the word freaky here. Freaky can mean that it's scary, okay? It's bizarre, grotesque, odd, scary, strange, in other words. Wriggle is what? As you see, it's W-R-I-G-G-L-E. So when we talk about wriggle, we're talking about squirm or crawl. I would say squirm even more because we're talking about how, imagine, worms wriggle, snakes can wriggle. So we're talking about movements of the body, especially with twists and turns in all directions. That's wriggle, and W-I-G-G-L-E. Wiggle is just short movements from side to side, okay? So don't get confused. Sensation is just another word for feeling or impression, okay? Sensation. Queasy. Let's try that. First syllable, que, que. One more time. Queasy, queasy. You can feel squeamish. You can feel nauseated. It means that you want to throw up. You feel queasy. Oh, I feel nauseated. Here we go, addicted to. If you are addicted to something, you are hooked on something. You're really devoted to something. You can be addicted to a person. So you can say, I think I'm addicted to you. This is just, I guess, an interesting, informal, casual way of saying, I really like you. I love you. I can't live without you. I'm addicted to you. 너에게 중독됐어. Okay? I'm addicted to you. Considering. Okay, when you put something into consideration, think about something. Considering Jamie's height. Thinking of Jamie's height, with his height in mind, I think he would make a great basketball player someday. So considering his height, you think he would be a great basketball player someday. Okay, and then moving on to that's the thing. Here we go. That's the thing is used to introduce, I guess, a disagreement or even an agreement sometimes. That's it. That's the thing, okay? That's the thing. That singer is only famous for one song he made 10 years ago. So that's the thing. Rebuttal. Okay, you're disagreeing or you're saying that's the problem. That singer is only famous for one song he made 10 years ago, a very long time ago. Okay, everyone, that is a wrap for today's actual expressions.
I have lived in Korea for so long that it's hard to say what is considered exotic food to me anymore. I've always liked Korean food and I've tried so many different things over the past few years. I guess one of the more exotic dishes that I've had would have to be live octopus or sannakji. It was really weird for me to see a chopped up octopus moving around on my plate or curling around my chopstick. It was even stranger to feel it moving around in my mouth as I was eating it. After a few pieces though, I found that the taste was actually really good and I really enjoyed eating it. One dish that's still pretty exotic to me and I could never bring myself to try would have to be silkworm larva or pondegi. I smell it sometimes when I'm walking on the street and people are cooking it and I really dislike the smell, but to be frank, I've always been afraid of bugs, so I don't think I could ever bring myself to actually eat one.
Okay, in today's actual story, we had Alexis helping us out, and yes, she and I have something in common. I'm not a big fan of bandigi. I've tried it once. The soup was alright. It was very sweet. I just didn't like the texture of the bandigi. I don't think I will ever try it again, but I am a huge fan of nakji, sannakji. So here we go. Alexis says it's hard to say what is considered, what is thought of as exotic food to me anymore. It's hard to say. It's difficult to think of any exotic foods. It was really weird. It was strange, weird for me to see a chopped up octopus moving around. Chopped up means cut up. into small pieces. So she says it was really strange for me to see a chopped up, cut up octopus moving around on my plate or curling around on my chopstick. So moving around and curling around her chopstick. So she's saying the octopus was moving around on her plate, but curling around her chopsticks. I have curls right now, curly hair. If something curls around something, we're talking about the nakji, the octopus, curling around the chopstick. So it was strange to see that. One dish that's still pretty exotic to me, and I could never bring myself to try would have to be silkworm larva. Okay, she could never try it ever again. She's talking about bandegi. She says, to be frank, to be honest, I've always been afraid of bugs. Bandegi could be considered a type of bug or an insect, so it's true. She doesn't really like the smell of bandegi, but in general, she is afraid of bugs. Okay, job well done. Have a listen one more time.
I have lived in Korea for so long that it's hard to say what is considered exotic food to me anymore. I've always liked Korean food and I've tried so many different things over the past few years. I guess one of the more exotic dishes that I've had would have to be live octopus or sannakji. It was really weird for me to see a chopped up octopus moving around on my plate or curling around my chopstick. It was even stranger to feel it moving around in my mouth as I was eating it. After a few pieces though, I found that the taste was actually really good and I really enjoyed eating it. One dish that's still pretty exotic to me and I could never bring myself to try would have to be silkworm larva or pondegi. I smell it sometimes when I'm walking on the street and people are cooking it and I really dislike the smell, but to be frank, I've always been afraid of bugs, so I don't think I could ever bring myself to actually eat one.
That was fun, wasn't it? We had a chance to talk about exotic types of Korean food. Exotic to foreigners, but maybe not so exotic to us. So keep in mind the definition of the word exotic. Exotic can mean, I guess, something strange or different in a good way, but sometimes it can mean that it's strange in a bad way, that you don't want to try it. So, for example, as Alexis told us, an exotic Korean food to her still and will be for a very, very long time is bandegi. So that in a way she's saying, oh, it's kind of a gross thing to eat. But of course we can say, nakji is an exotic type of Korean food, but it's delicious. Okay, so I hope you learned a lot and had fun. Next time let's talk about a totally different category, a different subject, topic. Let's talk about role models. So please do join me for that. In the meantime, come to our homepage, everyone. Come on over to www.ebse.co.kr. Look for Actual English with Jennifer Clyde. And if you have any messages to post them up on our message board. Okay, that is all for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.